iPads are the best tool ever created for learning languages, and when I was at university studying German, I wish I'd had access to something like an iPad mini with all the productivity and language learning apps that you have on offer today. If you want to check out my German skills just to see if I'm legit, then I'll leave a link down in the description where you can see that. But I've also been learning French and Japanese using my iPad over the past couple of years so that I can get closer to my family. It doesn't matter which language you're learning or what stage you're at. Today I want to give you lots of practical tips on how you can use your iPad to really make progress with your language learning goals. This video is sponsored by MOFT, who've kindly provided their dynamic folio, which I'll be showcasing throughout the video and tell you a little bit more about later on. But for now, let's talk about how you can set your iPad up for success. The first thing you want to do before downloading any fancy apps is simply go into your settings and enable alternative keyboards in your target language. Once you've set this up, you'll be able to click on the little globe icon at the bottom left-hand corner of your keyboard and switch between different languages automatically. This is amazing, especially if you're learning a language like Japanese, which has a non-Roman script. But even a lot of European languages like German or French have special characters and keyboard layouts that you'll want to learn and use as well. Enabling these keyboards though will also give you access to predictive text and autocorrect in your target language, so you'll be able to type much more fluently and make progress with your spelling. And it will also enable you to use dictation in your target language, which is really important too. That's because dictation in iPadOS is a really powerful feature and it's very accurate too, even in foreign languages. So if you've got a bit of social anxiety or you just want to practice speaking and you've got nobody that you can actually practice with, simply speaking into the Notes app in dictation will give you a really good sense of how you're progressing with the language. You can even go back to the transcript of what you just said and find common grammatical errors that you've been making in your speech. If you do have an in-person conversation that you'd like to record, then dictation will really help here too. Now, of course, the other major input method that makes the iPad so special is the Apple Pencil. If you are doing things like vocab drills, then handwriting is probably the best way to actually memorize things in your head, and it's definitely one of the best ways to learn grammar because you can play around with the words on a page. But the other really cool thing about an Apple Pencil on the iPad is it can help you to learn characters in the likes of hiragana. I actually like opening up Procreate, which is an art app actually, but you can use it pretty well to practice those hiragana characters. The Apple Pencil is also brilliant for marking up worksheets. I used to ruin my textbooks by writing on them in pen, but now what I do is go into Notability, which is a note-taking app. I take a screenshot of my page, turn it into a PDF format, and then I can do those drills and those exercises as many times as I want without actually ruining the book. And that can be important because books like this Genki textbook actually have quite a lot of resale value. To truly learn a language though, you need to immerse yourself in so many different tasks and situations. Unfortunately, standard iPad folios can get in the way of that because they're simply not flexible enough to adapt to all of the different scenarios you want to use them in. That's why I've loved learning languages with the MOFT Dynamic Folio on my iPad mini. Not only is it sturdy and portable, its origami-inspired design can fold into more than 20 viewing angles. You can also set the iPad at various heights, so you'll always have the perfect perspective no matter what you're doing. Match the two circular guide points and fold up into the floating theatre mode for an elevated viewing experience. Or flip into creation mode when you want to practice some writing in a non-Roman script. You can even dual screen with reference material on a phone. Read a grammar book perhaps, or rest the iPad on your lap in leg mount mode for a cozy cramming session. MOFT even offer a very cool modular pencil holder that protects your Apple Pencil and doubles as a ruler. Simply align the magnets and snap in your pencil to get started. The MOFT Dynamic Folio is available for multiple iPad models and is made with a scratch-resistant vegan leather which feels and looks great. Check out the link in my description for more information, and thank you to MOFT for sponsoring this video. But for now, let's get back to language learning. Now, while you absolutely don't need to go out and spend a ton of money on expensive language learning apps, there are a few that I would really recommend to help you get off the ground. The one that most people will gravitate to is Duolingo, and even as someone who's had a very formal language training at university, but also just learned by doing with family and friends in languages like French, I found Duolingo to be incredibly helpful. When you decide to start a new language, you can take an aptitude test that will help you accelerate to the relevant part of the course. And there's lots of different exercises that can help you learn your vocab and practice different grammatical concepts. One of the real key features of Duolingo is its ability to use things like storytelling to help you really become involved in the language and culture. There is a bit of controversy around Duolingo because they've started to replace freelance contractors with AI in order to write much more of these stories at scale. But one cool thing about the AI integration is that you can now interact with some of the characters in the Duolingo universe and have a real conversation with an AI agent in your target language. And that can actually be pretty cool. I'll admit I haven't used Duolingo in a while because you do often get to a stage with a language where the apps just don't really give you the freedom or the intrigue that they did when they started. But one of the cool things about Duolingo is that it will use its streak system to kind of gamify language learning and just kind of prompt you to actually dive back in every day. And building up that consistency and that kind of ritual around learning language is one of the most important things. An overlooked app that I actually find a lot more useful than Duolingo, especially when learning a language like Japanese, is Pimsleur. Now, Pimsleur is kind of a throwback to those language tapes that you used to throw into your car stereo. And it basically has a real big emphasis on learning practical speech and sentences that you can actually use in real life conversations. So it will throw you into all these scenarios and get you to repeat vocabulary and sentences. But interestingly, they actually do stick, and you'll find yourself being able to navigate difficult languages with a fair amount of fluency. Now, of course, this is not going to help you in terms of speaking a language fluently or creatively. It's not going to help you understand grammatical concepts or improve your writing or things like that. But there are lots of other features within the app, like flashcard games and speech practice, that can help you just gain a lot more confidence and understanding of the language. Once you're done with that, a real great way to actually accelerate your language learning and use it in a very real sense is to go on italki. One of the real challenges of learning a language is that if there's nobody in your immediate vicinity who can speak that language, it can be very hard to actually go out and use it, build your confidence, and actually get a taste of what it's like to communicate in a target language. But italki is brilliant because it's got this huge back catalogue of language teachers and just people who want to share their languages in the community. You can book out time in their calendar very easily, and it usually costs anywhere between $10 and $50 depending on the experience of that particular teacher. The teachers will typically have a conversation with you and also set you some homework, maybe give you access to some textbooks they've got, and help you through targeted advice on different parts of the language you're struggling with. There are actually loads of new features that have been added to italki, so it's much more beyond this kind of booking service these days. But yeah, worth checking that one out as well. And honestly, if you want to really master a language, it's well worth picking up a grammar book that you can read on your Kindle app or something like that, where you really understand the rules and the terms that kind of encompass language learning. One of the reasons it's easier to pick up a language if you've already learned one in the past is you'll be familiar with a lot of the different grammatical terms and things like that. So just being able to learn those and apply them to the language you are learning, it just gives you that deeper understanding of actually how to speak it. These days though, to be fair, if you do get stuck on anything like that, you can always just ask ChatGPT or Claude, Gemini, your AI agent of choice, and they'll usually give you really good breakdowns of specific grammatical rules. Anyway, what is all this language learning for if you're not using the language to, dive into different cultures and just enjoy the world of literature, music, film that's out there? And the iPad again comes into its own here as a really great just media consumption device. One of the shows that I fell in love with last year was Hospital Playlist on Netflix, which is a K-drama set in a fictional hospital in Seoul. And yeah, even as someone who isn't necessarily trying to learn Korean, I definitely picked up a few phrases like "gurom" as I was watching that show. And really, you can take this to any level of detail that you want. Once you get a bit more experience with the language, I would suggest actually switching the subtitles over to that target language. So for example, if you're watching Parallels, which is a good show on Disney Plus in French, actually put the subtitles on French, and then if you don't understand any of the dialogue, simply pause the screen and just note down in your notes exactly what they've written. You can use the built-in translation function in iPadOS to immediately translate that, or you can add it to your bank of words that you want to memorize. It's just a really good way to actually interact with the media you're watching, and it's always good to watch episodes twice after you've done this and see if you can understand things in a more natural flow. There's also tons of amazing music out there that English speakers are just missing out on, so would you believe it, German rap is actually really cool, and I'm also a big K-pop fan, so just getting my iPad, putting it into a vertical mode, which is a lot easier with this Folio, and just getting the lyrics up on the screen and singing along with the music, that can be a brilliant way of just immersing yourself in a language. There's also tons of podcasts out there. Learn French by Podcast was a big one that helped me to really improve my French skills. And of course, the likes of Duolingo have their own podcasts that will help you learn any language as well. Reading is also going to be a huge game changer in terms of learning a language. And of course, you've got the Kindle app on there if you ever need to download some books. It's worth checking out kids' books if you are just starting out. So, Le Petit Prince in French is a good one to begin with. And you can just sit in the garden and have a nice read, and you're learning another language, and that's pretty brilliant, eh? You can do so much more with an iPad, so I recommend watching this video next if you want a bit more inspiration. But thanks so much for watching this one, and I'll see you in a bit.